Good morning, class 12 students. In today's session, we will be studying the poem An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum, and it is written by Stephen Spender. So, before we proceed with the poem, the poetic device and explanation part, let's discuss a few things about the poet Stephen Spender. Sir Spender, he was born on 28 February 1909 and he died on 16 July 1995. He was an English poet, novelist, essayist, and you will see that his works, they always talk about, that you will always find the themes of social injustice and the class inequalities and the struggles, right? And it is actually very commendable that he was appointed poet laureate in United States Library of Congress in 1965. So in this poem you will see that Stephen Spender, he's actually trying to highlight the injustice which is very common in our society. He talks about social injustice and class inequalities and lack of opportunities to slum dwellers. Slum dwellers, the people who live in slum, they don't have their own house. They live in a very pathetic condition, right? So he is also talking about a widening gap between haves and have-nots, means between rich and poor, right? So here, through this poem, he's actually lashing out on, and he's actually trying to hit hard at the capitalist economy, and yes, his poem actually, Spender's poem, it supports that, it actually exposes the difference between the rich, and the poor, right? And obviously the miserable conditions of the children of the slum, which we will be reading shortly about. So it is actually he is the poem talks about this discrimination that these poor children face. The government, and nobody is actually looking at them. Nobody is bothered. They are actually nobody is bothered. Nobody wants to give wants to pay attention to them, right? They're like discarded children, and they do not have any facility. They don't even have any proper education, right? So in this poem he has also highlighted that education is a powerful weapon, that if you are educated enough, I mean yes, you can actually bring a reform, right? And to make education necessary and to make it sure that everybody gets educated, I think the rich people and the society and the government, they all have to work in unison or harmoniously, right? So this is very important, that everybody need to look at it, especially the rich and the powerful people. So that is what the Stephen's poem is trying to convey, right? And he's also trying to depict the pathetic and miserable conditions of these slum dweller. So his style is very simple when he writes. It's very clear, and yes, his poem is always this. And especially if I talk about this poem, An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum, this poem is actually, it is brimming with a lot of figure of speeches, poetic devices. We have similes, we have metaphors, we have symbols, we have images. So this poem is so it is so rich, yes, it is actually very rich. And now I think we should discuss that what are the images and symbols, and yes, the poetic devices. We'll discuss them, right? So this is the first stanza. Let's talk about images and symbols. Images, when you read a poem, and when you read a statement, when you talk about something, when you read something, and suddenly an image, it forms up in your mind. So that is actually image. And what is symbolism? Symbolism means when something symbolizes some for example, tiger symbolizes bravery. So this is called symbols. So in this poem, the gusty waves, it is also an example of example of images. And what does it symbolizes? That these people are actually, they are in a place where the atmosphere is choked. They are far from gusty waves, right? And then we have paper seeming boy. Paper seeming boy, it is again images, symbols, and it is also an example of metaphor. We have rootless weeds. Rootless weeds, weeds which is unwanted plants, right? Then we have twisted bones. It is again images. It also symbolizes, the yes the pathetic condition. I mean, these children are malnourished. They are very unhealthy, and all that. And then we have sour cream walls, Tyrese Valley, ships and suns, bottle bits on stones, Shakespeare head, open-handed map, crammed holes, and gold sands. So, children, I'm also, because this poem is actually, this poem has lots of poetic devices. So, I will be making a very short video. Uh, when we will be short video discussing uh, these poetic and figure of speeches, right? Poetic devices and figure of speeches, so that you could actually understand them. I mean, you can memorize, you can understand, and you can learn them easily, right? And then we have alliterations. I will when alliterations, when when there is this consonant sound, repeated consonant sounds, when you find two adjacent words, and you get to know when you find you know the similar consonant sounds of the first word, right? For example, sun shines, you can see that s sound, the consonant sound is being repeated, right? So it is an example of alliteration. And simile is very simple to identify, because when you compare two things with using as and like, then it is an example of uh, yes, simile. For example, they are like rootless weeds. So yes, this is clearly an example of simile, because the children have been compared with rootless weeds. Rootless weeds means unwanted weeds, nobody want them, right? Or like bottle bits on stones, like this is like here, right? So this is an example of simile, and it is also an example of images and symbols, right? And then like slum as big as doom, right? Because there is no hope. The slum is shut upon them, the opportunities, hope, and everything. So, and then we have metaphor. Metaphor is very simple. When when you compare two things without using as and like, and when you see there is an underlying meaning, uh, you know uh, of a word, because a word has a literal meaning, and then the word has uh, an underlining meaning, right? So in this case, it becomes an example of metaphor. For example, rat's eyes. Rat's eyes means it is mouse eye, but the literal meaning is mouse eye, but actually rat's eyes means there is a child, he is malnourished, he does not get enough food, he does not get enough opportunities, so his eyes are like, it is like so hungry, like rat's eyes, right? So this shows their condition, that they are so malnourished, they're looking for opportunities and all. Understand? And yes, and we have a long list of metaphor in this poem, like rat's eye, squirrel's game. Here squirrel's games means freedom, right? Open-handed map. Open-handed map, it is actually the map created by the rich people, right? Lead sky means choked sky. Slag heap. Slag heap, it is actually a area where all the scrap is collected, and the leftover, this once the productive thing is taken, what remains is slag heap. So these children are like slag heap, right? Nobody want them, even they don't have their I mean, they are so discarded that they don't have any value. And spectacles of steel, this again depicts their you know pathetic condition, that how poor and yes, destitute they are, right? And white and green leaves open, here it means the book, right? The pages. You will I mean, we will study them separately, and also when we will go through the stanzas, we will yes, we will pay attention to each and every poetic device, figure of speeches, poetic device that have been used in this poem. And tree room, father's gnarl disease, that shows that how the child is, how unfortunate he is, that he has received his inheritance, his father's disease as inheritance, right? Okay, now let's go through the first stanza. uh, Let me just highlight it for you. Far, far from gusty waves, these children's faces, like rootless weeds, their the hair torn round their pallor. The tall pallor is face. The tall girl with her weighed down head, the paper seeming boy with rat's eye, the stunted, unlucky air of twisted bones, reciting a father's gnarl disease. Reciting a father's gnarl disease means actually he is suffering from his father's disease, right? So he is actually carrying it on, the disease. Uh, his lessons from his desk at back of the dim class. Uh, One unnoted, sweet and young, his eyes lives in a dream of squirrel's game in a tree room other than this. So in the first stanza, the poet Spender, Stephen Spender, he actually talks about the miserable condition of the children in a school, right? So in this stanza, he's actually talking about children who are in the school, right? So how the children's faces are like, they are like, their faces are very different, like unlike the usual children of schools, right? And how they are, because usual, because if you compare yourself, you go to your school, you're happy, you're energetic because you come from a good family, right? But these children, they are like rootless weed, like rootless weeds. So it is an example of simile. Understand? They're like rootless weeds. And they're like exhausted, they're malnourished, right? That is why uh, you could see that there is actually a girl, and I think she's also malnourished, and she's poverty stricken because they are very, unclean, they're untidy, they're malnourished, they're also very hungry, right? Just like, when you uproot weeds from your field, right? So they're like uprooted weeds. So uprooted weeds, this is again an example of what? Simile, right? Discarded, I mean, nobody want them, like rootless weeds. So it is an example of simile. Understand? And then, there is a, because nobody wants them in, not the society, nobody wants them, right? And there is a girl, okay, there is a tall slim girl, and she, she has her head bowed down, and it seems she is actually, she is very tired, she's so exhausted, maybe because she has not eaten well, or maybe she, she's so poor. Yes, she is so poor and she cannot afford food, she is malnourished, right? And that is why she's so weak, she's so feeble, and also she's not emotionally strong because she lives in a very pathetic condition, right? She's poverty stricken, right? And if we talk about the other children apart from this girl, there is a boy, and this boy is very unfortunate because he who is as thin as paper, he's as thin as paper. This is again, an example of images. He's a paper thin boy, right? How he is a paper, um, and then paper seeming boy, and then there is a boy. He's so unfortunate that he's actually the victim of a genetic disorder. He has got gnarled bones. Gnarled bones means, which means twisted bones. It means he has got, his growth is stunted, right? It is stopped. So he has, most of the children, they inherited lots of property and, from their father, but this child is so unfortunate that he had inherited this disease from his father, right? And he's actually reciting his lesson from his desk in a very weak and feeble voice. And you know uh, and there is there is also, we at the back of the dim class, this class is not it is actually poorly lit. That is why it is called dim class. It is ill equipped, it is dim class, poorly lit. And uh, you know uh, at the back we have a boy, and he seems very sweet young, and his eyes live in a dream, and this boy is actually dreaming, right? He's not paying attention in the classroom, maybe because there is no teaching, right? I don't think that there is any teaching in schools in slum area, right? So this boy is distracted. He's a daydreamer. He's a daydreamer. So what this boy is doing, he's actually the classroom does not interest him, right? So actually he's distracted, and he is looking at the squirrel in her tree room. So what is tree room here? Tree room is here squirrel's home, right? It is squirrel's home. And he also dreams of the fun, and the fun yes, the fun and the enjoyment and the happiness that he could play in in an open space or in an open area, like squirrel, because they are actually trapped, right? So where are they trapped? They are actually trapped in this slum area. They cannot get it out because they don't have anything to do. They can't go out. So that is why he is dreaming of an open space so that he could play and enjoy and have fun. And you will see that in the second stanza of this poem, you will see that poet is actually trying to the poet is trying the poet is the in the second stanza, the poet describes the condition of the classroom and the condition of this the slums, this elementary school classroom in a slum area, right? So in the first stanza he talked about in the first like 5 or 6 lines, 7 line, he talked about he showed us that how the children are, how they looks exhausted, they look malnourished, right? They have twisted bone disease. They cannot even raise their head. They are shamed. They are because of poverty, they are emotional, they are weak emotionally, and they are malnourished, right? They are so hungry, they are looking for opportunity, they wants to get out, right? And in the second stanza, which I have just highlighted, the poet is talking about the condition, and the condition of the classroom, that the classroom is very dirty and how it looks. So I think we will be doing the remaining session, the remaining stanzas in the next video. That's all for today. So before I wind up this session, let me just let me just highlight the poetic devices we have come across in this stanza, like rootless weeds. Like rootless weed is an example of similes, because children have been compared the discarded and the unwanted plants when you sow seed, when you grow crop, right? And when you find weed in your in your field, what do? You just pull them out, you just uproot them, and you just throw them, right? So that's how these children are. They have been thrown, right? Nobody's paying attention. They are like discarded ones. And the paper seaming boy, it is an example of the paper seaming boy is images which actually instigate us to imagine and this create the image of the child, and also symbolize symbolism of that how these children look very in a very pathetic condition, right? And then we have we what do we have here? We have twisted bones. Yes, twisted bone means gnarl disease. This is again example of images and symbolism, right? And then we have rat's eye. With rat's eye, rat's eye, it is an example of metaphor, which means the child has hungry eyes. He's looking for opportunity. Okay, so children, that's all for today. We'll be doing the remaining stanza in the next video. Please watch the video from the beginning to the end, and please do look for the homework that you will receive on Arcel and complete it, and make sure you submit it positively, right? uh, don't miss your lecture, don't and do watch the video from the beginning to the end. Thank you everyone, have a nice day.